been, even though it has meant a lot of extra time for me. The assessment has been pretty good. We do a pre-survey of students before the first session. We have quizzes after each session. And then we also follow up with project outcome survey at the end, just to get some qualitative data as well. One thing that surprised me was scores were actually much better than the quiz scores in person, even though the questions were the same. So that's something that we want to dive into a little bit more to see if we can replicate that improvement when we go back to in-person. So just to finish up this more formal presentation before we get to some discussion, our fall is still a mystery. What we've decided is that if it's hybrid, we will make just a couple small tweaks to the module and deliver it in the exact same method. If Messiah does go back to an all in-person model, you will also return to the in-person model that we had originally revised it to, but we will probably make some revisions. So I guess a revision of the revision of the revision to try to get the best of both worlds. Seeing the better scores in those modules makes us wonder how we can improve the in-person in order to really improve that in-person delivery also. So I'm happy to really take any questions or comments, or if somebody would like to share what they're doing as well. We'd love to see what kind of discussion points we have.
Beth, there was one question in the chat. The question was, what was the feedback from students who needed research skills for fall assignments that would not be taught until the spring semester?
Right. Well, yeah, great question. So we did offer some research in session 2 within that first semester. The theme is find quality sources. And what we do in that is talk about search strategies, and we introduce the library catalog in a general academic database. We have Academic Search Ultimate from EBSCO. So we do provide that in the first semester. And then in the second semester, we reinforce and review those strategies and then apply them to a wider range of databases. But one thing that we do come across, and we've discussed this as librarians, is that, and I think this addresses the question a bit as well, is that we do not have that research session until a little bit later in that first semester. So what we have done in that first orientation session, which is usually just a week or two into the semester, is during the library website navigation activity, which in normal times is a small group activity, I as the librarian will jump in when the small group of students are talking about the library catalog or the database, and just deliberately make note of the fact, if you need to find a book before the next session, go here and just type a few words in about your topic. If you need to find a journal article, click this link. So we don't talk about the strategy, but we will say in that first session, just go here and type something in. Or remember, you can always just contact a librarian, and they learn that the first session as well. And then the second session, we have some basic research strategies that we offer. And then, as I mentioned, that is also then reinforced in the final session that we have with them. Thanks.
There are a couple other comments in the chat. One person says they did the same thing for their English 101 sessions. They created an asynchronous module that sort of mimics what they do in person, added some free online games, knowledge checks, a pre and post test, and module feedback from students. They go on to say, even though we were hybrid, all faculty took the module for fall semester.
Great, and I love the games aspect of that. Ours is doesn't have any fun aspects like games, so I would actually love to explore that a little bit as well and hear more about that too. That's wonderful.
Another question in the chat, someone is wondering if you cover topic development in your sessions.
Great question. We do not cover topic development in our sessions. I do know that that is discussed in classes before the library session, and it's been nice being embedded in the Canvas sections because I can see at least what's being done online and to see how professors are approaching that. So yes, that is certainly a big part of information literacy that we do not really address deliberately with students in first year seminar or the spring core course. So yeah, maybe if folks have ideas about that, but I do know that it is addressed more formally in the classroom itself.
Okay, great. While people are thinking about that, we have, looks like 2 more questions came in. Someone wants to know if you use the free version of Zotero or if you have a site license for it.
We just use the free version, yes. So we do introduce students, you may have seen that on this slide, to citation management software. That would be session 3, which is in the spring term. It's all that we do is provide a video showing how to use Zotero. And then we provide a manual for students if they wish to adopt it on their own. What I find is at least our students typically don't take that step on their own. I do work with other classes at higher undergraduate levels, and they are often a bit more interested when they see it apply to a more in-depth research project. So we try to offer it to students and introduce them to students, realizing, at least in our experience, not too many students use it within that first year.
A couple other comments. The person that asked about topic development mentioned that they connect it to developing search strategies.
Great.
And then the individual that uses games in their module said that they use EduPlay, and they did put a link in the chat, so you should be able to see that. She created a free matching game, or a matching game. The service is free. It's probably more for K-12, but it added something different to the module.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing. I will definitely take a look at that myself as we are continuing to revise.
And one more question about what is your response rate for your assessment?
Yeah, great question. So in class, when we do in-class assessment, it's a Kahoot Quiz. So while we don't require students to participate in Kahoot, they could just look at the questions on the screen. But as probably most of you know, if you use Kahoot, our students love it. So they get right on with their phones and they're competing with each other and they're having a great time. With the assessment in the asynchronous modules, it's a quiz that's just part of the module itself. We've had, it's not ideal as far as there's no way to enforce participation unless the professor chooses to assign points to it. So I've seen some professors assign points and kind of monitor it and make sure students complete it, and other ones, yeah, it wasn't quite as good a response rate. So that has been a challenge. If we do stay with these asynchronous modules, if our institution continues with hybrid for this coming academic year, we may talk with the core course director to see if there's a way to kind of enforce that. With project outcome, that's the final assessment that we do. I would say probably about a 40% response rate. When we send out that survey, we do make sure that students understand it's anonymous and voluntary, because it's coming to them through their course management system. So we don't want them to be confused about that. But we still do get, I think, a fairly good response rate considering those parameters.
And let's see, there was someone that asked if you use ACRL project outcome as part of your assessment, but it sounds like you already addressed that.
We do.
And let's see, the one more did come in, and I will just say again that if you do have a question you would prefer to vocalize, just raise your hand and one of us can unmute you. But do these sessions reach 100% of your first year students?
Yes, so in the in-person session, they absolutely do, because they're attending class and the professor is there and can see who is there, who is not, and then we can follow up with students if for some reason they miss class that day. So yes, that is 100% participation or expected participation with all 4 sessions. As I mentioned before, with this asynchronous module, it's been a little less, I suspect, again, depending on the faculty engagement I'm really seeing. So again, if we have to stay with this format, we may look at working with faculty and the core course director to make sure that that expectation is still being met on the asynchronous module in the same way that it would be met in an in-person environment. But yes, the goal is 100% mandatory participation.
And now all of us are incredibly jealous, I'm sure.
As I said, we are incredibly fortunate. And this has been going back decades with really great collaboration and expanded access. So we're very fortunate in that.
Someone would like to know if you considered synchronous online sessions at all.
Great. Yeah, I love that question. So when we were discussing this over the summer, that did come up. So yes, we did consider online synchronous. If we would have, I would clearly not have been the single librarian coordinator for all sections. So we would have divided out the sections to each librarian as we would in an in-person environment. So we did discuss that. We ended up going with the asynchronous module, not so much for our benefit or student benefit, but for faculty benefit. Just realizing how much pressure faculty feel like they're under right now. We thought that adding this as a synchronous session where they would need to schedule it with the librarian, make sure that the technology is set up correctly, and all of those factors would just be something that none of the librarians wanted to add to the faculty load at this point. So that was the main driving force for our decision to use asynchronous modules.
There's just a comment in the chat that it's really awesome that you get 4 sessions with these students.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, when we had 2, which is awesome in and of itself, I completely understand. But even then we felt like we were hitting students with the fire hose. And now, as you can see with us parsing it out, I feel that we're giving students chunks of information that they can kind of digest and take in, as opposed to getting everything at once and feeling completely shell-shocked. So for us, it's certainly a lot more work on our part, but I think it really makes up for the fact that we're trying to stay away from overwhelming the student.
And it sounds like you're getting it to them when they need it, at least for the research paper end.
Yes, we have been able, again, because both of these core courses are pretty standardized across all sections. we're able to say, okay, this session goes with research paper number 1, and this session goes with the final research paper. So, right, we're able to pair it immediately with the paper that it goes with.
Folks, we are coming up to the end of our time. We have about 5 minutes left. So if you have any questions or comments, now would be the time to share those. And Emily did just put the session evaluation form in the chat. Well, folks, seeing no more questions or comments, nothing else coming in, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today and Beth for presenting to us. I hope everyone does take a few minutes to fill out that session evaluation form and let us know your thoughts about the presentation today and about our programming in general. The link for the survey is in the links area at the bottom of the presentation screen. If you are not, as a reminder, the recording of this will be available to PALA members early next week through the website. If you are not a PALA member and you are interested in becoming one, please feel free to email me and I'll have the appropriate person contact you. I also invite you to contact me or anyone else on the committee with your suggestions for future discussions and presentations. And I most definitely invite you to contact me if you yourself would like to present. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day and maybe we will see you next time.